Here we have a picture of Sweden's landscape. The breathtaking views are something that I would like to see in my lifetime. With all the forests and picturesque towns combined with the blue coastline, this looks like something right out of a painting. The capital of Sweden is Stockholm. Above, we can see a photo of Stockholm. On the left side, you can see public transit, of course, and generally you can see that the city is designed in an interesting way, paying close attention to the colors that are used, and of course, large sidewalks, and generally speaking, an excellent example of a port city. In the following presentation, the culture of Sweden will be detailed. Included are Swedish cuisine and variances thereof, including culture and foodways, Swedish values and religion, and language and dialect. At the end of the presentation, we will also see a few interesting side topics about Sweden, such as the IKEA Museum, and of course, the green energy usage in Sweden as a whole. Sweden is located in northern Europe on the Scandinavian peninsula, between Norway and Finland. As you can see, Sweden touches both the Baltic and North Sea. It is just north of Germany, Poland, and Denmark. There are thousands of islands along the rocky coastline which form archipelagos. Forests cover nearly 2/3 of the country. The northern part of Sweden is more rural than the southern. Sweden benefits from the commercial fishing and fishing generally along its very large coastline. As we can see, the geography of Sweden thus really dictates what is eaten and, as such, the cultural inclinations of the people that live in those regions. Much like other areas of the world, Swedish cuisine is influenced by its geography. On the left we see a Swedish Christmas buffet. There are plenty, of course, of pickled meats and various cured meats, and a popular dish in general in Sweden, or rather category, is dairy. In the colder climate of northern Sweden, reindeer meat and other game are more common, while in the southern region, Swedes enjoy more vegetables as a result of more hospitable soil. It is also important to note that much of the northern region is covered in forest. This is why we see the prevalence of game. Both regions benefit from the large coastline which provides plentiful fish and seafood. Forest regions, which cover most of the country, provide Swedes with game, berries, and mushrooms throughout the country. The main components of the Swedish diet are dairy products, stone fruits and berries, breads, and meat. Thursdays in Sweden, interestingly enough, are soup days. This practice allowed maids to take a half day off and also allowed chefs to use leftovers. As we can see, Swedish cuisine is similar, of course, to other Germanic cuisines. Sweden certainly enjoys its coffee. In fact, it's one of the top coffee consumers in the world. The cultural practice in Sweden known as the fika has become a cultural trend that has extended to other European nations and the Americas, including here in the United States. During a fika, Swedes spend time together discussing political and social issues in coffee shops, at home, or perhaps at a college campus. This practice is more of a way of life. Swedes believe in communicating multiculturally, perhaps discussing important social and political issues, and generally they enjoy getting together. The main language spoken in Sweden is Swedish. However, it is important to note that there is technically no official language in the country. There are also 5 minority languages spoken, which are Finnish, Sami, Meänkieli, Romani, Chib, and Yiddish. Swedish is a Germanic language. As is the case in many European countries, several languages are present due to multicultural influences. English is also spoken widely across Sweden. Dialect varies from region to region, and one could say that in more urban regions, more languages are spoken. Recent migration to Sweden, for example, of Syrian refugees, brings new cultures and dialects, and of course languages, into the region. This recent increased immigration in Sweden has brought to light issues amongst non-native Swedish speakers. Immigrants living in urban areas are isolated in many cases from native speakers, thus driving them away from the Swedishness desired by many native Swedes. The Swedish Language Act has put emphasis on the importance of bilingualism, though it has been criticized for advancing Swedish as the primary language. This act has been seen by some as a means to advance Swedishness and, in a way, nationalism. Sweden is by all means a secular country. It has had no official state religion since 2000, when the Church of Sweden was separated officially from the state. Up until this ruling, Swedes were automatically members of the Church. 62% of Swedes currently identify as members of the Church of Sweden, but only 29% of Swedes identify as religious. Above we see Uppsala Cathedral, the largest in Sweden. The Church of Sweden is Evangelical Lutheran, and though many Swedes are not what we may consider religious, Christian traditions and rituals are still present in everyday society. While Christian rituals are still performed in Sweden, religiosity is not as big of an issue. Of course, this more liberal society values speaking to one another about issues in general. This is an important cultural concept, as we've observed in the traditional practice of the fika. The lack of religious influence on political life in Sweden is thus really non-existent. Perhaps this is due to the role that the Church of Sweden plays. For instance, its records are available for public scrutiny and transparency. The records have been maintained, so really anyone can view those records if they like, and of course the Church of Sweden imposes that 1% tax, but it would seem as though Swedes have no problem paying it. All in all, it is clear that this secular society gets along fairly well, and that perhaps the transparency of its religious institutions has something to do with perhaps how Swedes view that religion in total. I'm sure everyone is familiar with the iconic IKEA furniture. Of course, this is that minimalist furniture everybody sees everywhere. But I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't think that there would be something like the IKEA Museum. So, actually, Sweden has an IKEA museum. It is actually in the original IKEA building built in 1958, and it covers the development of the company through the decades and offers visitors the chance to see original designs and concepts. So, as you can see, another cool fact about Sweden. Sweden's energy use is also something to be envied by the rest of the world. The picture to the left here shows a pine forest in Sweden. Of course, as we know, Sweden is, again, covered in 2/3 forest. As such, Sweden makes good use of this land. More than half of Sweden's energy uses is comprised of energy resources that are renewable. For instance, wind power accounts for nearly 11% of electricity. Bioenergy is also implemented across Sweden, and government funding has allowed the solar market to take off. Sweden also has a low emission rate due to its usage of hydroelectric and nuclear power. In summary, Sweden has an incredible ecosystem due to its proximity to coastline and its massive forests. This ecosystem provides a harvest of berries, stone fruits, and various wild game to its inhabitants. Due to its climate, there are regional differences in cuisine. Sweden is a fairly liberal place. There's no official religion nor language, and the Swedish way seems to be socially conscious and open. We see a link, for instance, between the fika breaks and cultural values. Discussion and keeping an open mind are important to Swedes everywhere. As immigration continues to Sweden, new cultures and languages will be introduced to the state. As Swedish values of collectivism and social awareness hold true, Sweden will easily be able to absorb and assimilate these new cultures without being culturally insensitive, as many other European nations have exhibited recently. Given its place in the world as a beacon of social democracy and a functional welfare state, Sweden should be viewed by other nations as an example of what could happen if people are given precedent over profits.